Hello guys, welcome to Online Web Tutor presented by Profotech Solutions team. I am Sanjay. We are learning Laravel Admin Panel Development Beginners tutorial and this is our part 19. Inside this video session guys, we are going to use our figure library to create a staff type, a staff as well as for the students. And also guys, if you are a beginner to the channel, then please don't forget to subscribe and keep watching our previous video sessions to get the clear concept about Laravel Admin Panel Development Beginners tutorial. So in our previous video sessions guys, we have used our figure library to create the data for our classes. If you go to the class sections, this is the data actually we have created by using model, and if you go back, clicking on the classes, these are the data actually we have created by using our figure library. So by following the same procedure, by following the same sets of rule, we are going to actually import the data for our staff type, which will be inserted inside this faculty type as well as for the faculties and for the students. So these are the things that we are going to set up inside this video session. So let's just start creating one by one about these table structures. So first of all, we are going to insert the data inside these faculty types. So click on that, go to structure. So inside these faculty types, we need about the type and the status, but the status has default value. So we need only one data, something called type. So back to terminal, I'm going to create and insert the data about the same procedure what we have done about the class section. This is the rule that we are going to follow. So back to terminal, let's create a seeder file. So PHP artisan make, this is about seeder, and we are going to create a faculty type. So this is faculty type seeder. Pressing enter. And now as we can see that seeder created successfully. So let me give the permission to this file. So this is about what I have supplied the permission to this file. So successfully we have created our seeder file. Back to editor. Now inside this seeds folder, as we can find that this is the file that we have created. So inside this file, I'm going to import our models. So use, let's app models, and this is all about faculty type. So this is faculty type. Now next we have to create our data set. So let's say data, we have to create an empty array. Inside this array, we are going to create or store multiple arrays inside this array. And finally, we are going to insert this data inside, let's say faculty type insert, and inside this insert method, we are going to pass this data. Now finally we have to supply the data. So inside this array, we have a key, something called type. So if I copy this type back to array, and let's say that type first values, let's say it's teaching. So let's say teaching. Okay, teaching. Finally, let's copy and paste this row. So I'm just copying and pasting. So this is all about non-teaching. This is second faculty type. Next, let's say that lab masters, this is another category. Now next we are going to add the fourth one, and they are something called sports teacher. So let's say sports and teacher. So basically guys, we have created 4 different faculty types inside our faculty table. So if I save this file, go to terminal, and before going to terminal, if I open about the database seeder file, let me comment this file, and I'm going to write this file. So let's say this class, and what we have made something called faculty type seeder, and this is the class. So just save this file, go to terminal, and I'm going to write something called first of all clear, and let's say PHP artisan and db seed. So if I press enter, back to our browser, database table, reload this browse section, and as we can see that we have inserted 4 different values inside these faculty types. This is the next table that we have implemented. What about faculties? So if I back to faculties, go to structure, so these are the values that we have to supply inside this faculties table. So basically for this faculties table, we have to create a factory file and a seeder file. So back to editor, inside this factory, let's create our first factory file, and this is all about, let's say faculty factory.php. Inside this factory, let's get rid of all these comments first, and I'm going to use a Faker library for that. Next, we have to define as factory. Let's define. Inside this define, first parameter that we have to pass as the model, which model basically related with this faculty factory. So we have to import that. So use app, let's say model, and we know that we have a, let's say, faculty. This is the model that we are going to use. So all we have to import that. Or directory, if I just copy this import section, I'm going to use inside this define. So this is the another way to use that. Next we have to pass anonymous function. So let's say function. Inside this function we have to pass a faker parameter. So let's say that here we have to write faker, and this is the faker parameter. By using this faker object, we are going to put our dummy values to our columns. Now next we have to supply values. So let's return. This is an empty array. Inside this array, we are going to put our values according to these IDs. So first parameter we have to pass as faculty type ID. So I'm going to copy this key back to editor, and let's say that this is our faculty type ID. So for that, we have to import, let's say, app models, and inside this we have faculty type. So for this parameter we have to use called faculty type all, let's say random, and this is ID. Basically this will give a random ID from this faculty type table. It means that if you go to faculty types, it will generate a random ID from these IDs like 1, 2, 3 and 4. Something values we will get inside this key. Back to browser. Now next parameter we have to pass, if I just scroll down and let me click on faculties, go to structure. Now we have to pass as name. Back to editor, and let's say that name, inside this we are going to use called faker, and here we have a parameter called name. Next we have to pass called email. So just copy this key, pasting it here, and let's say that faker. We have a method called unique. Basically this will generate the unique email ID for each faculty, and also we have to use a property called save email. Next we have to pass a parameter, something called designation. So if I copy here and let me paste, and let's say that, so basically for this key I'm going to put left blank as for now. So back to browser. Next we have to pass as phone number. So copy this key, let's say that phone number. I'm going to use called faker, and this has a property called phone number. All about these properties, guys, actually you can find all on its documentation. This is the GitHub link. Actually you will find all the keys related information about phone number, about address. All these actually came from this documentation. If I just suppose for phone number, scroll down, this is the phone number that we have used inside this key, as you can see here. Back to browser. Now the next parameter we have to use called gender ID. So basically this is gender ID is associated with our genders table, and if you go inside this table we have no data. So first of all we have to insert some data inside this genders table. So how can we insert that? So back to terminal, let me create a seeder file. So PHP artisan, let's say make seeder, and this is all about gender seeder. If I press enter, seeder created successfully. And finally I'm going to give permission, so chmod, and this is the permission that I have supplied to the file. So back to editor. Now inside this seeds folder, as we find that we have a gender seeder file. So inside this gender seeder, first of all if I go inside this models folder, and here we have gender model. So if I press, and I think that this is the table that we have attached with this gender model called TBL genders. So now we are going to insert the data inside this gender table. So go to our seeder file, and let's say that dataset. Inside this array we have to store some values, and that value should be something called male and the female. So inside this structure section we have a key called type. So copy this key, pasting it here, and let's say that type, it should be firstly it should be male. In the second we have to pass as female. So these are the two things that I'm going to insert into the genders table. So let's say that, and also we have to import our models. So use, let's say app models, and finally we have to use called gender. So let's say that gender, and finally I'm going to use called insert, and insert this insert method pass this data variable. So if I go to database header file, let me comment it first, and I'm going to use call this call, and here we have to pass call gender seeder class file. So save this file, back to our terminal, and let's say that PHP artisan db seed, press enter, and gender seeder successfully seeded that. So back to browse section, and as we can see that the male and the female two values we have inserted inside this genders folder. Now we are going to use these values inside our faculty factory file. So we have to import called use, let's app models, and let's say gender. By importing this model file, back to browser, and if I go inside this faculties, go to structure, we have called gender ID. So copy this key, back to editor, and let's say that gender ID, and this is something called gender all random method, and finally ID. It will give the random ID from our genders table. What we have next, back to our browser, we have called profile photo. For this column we can just put as null value because we have put it as a default value. So we are not going to insert any profile photo to all faculties. Next we have called address. So if I copy this key, back to editor, and let's say that address, I'm going to use called faculty library for and address as a key. So if I save this file, all we have done with our factory file, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all these columns we have set our default values for these factory files. Next we have to create a seeder file for our factory section. So back to our terminal, clear out all these things, and let's say PHP artisan make seeder, and let's say faculty seeder. So if I press enter, seeder created successfully. So I'm going to give the permission. This is all about the permission. Go to our seeds folder. Inside this seeds folder, here is called something faculty seeder that we have created. So back here, and I'm going to use called use, or just get rid of this statement, and I'm going to use called directly factory. We have to use called create method, and inside this factory import our models. So app, let's say models, we have called faculty, and this is our class, and we are going to create called 50 faculties for our school application. So let's say 50. So save this file, and also go to database header file. I'm going to commit this line, and finally let's say this call, let's say faculty seeder, and this is all about class file. So back to terminal, clear all these things, and let's say PHP artisan db seed. If I press enter, faculty seeder successfully inserted our dummy values inside this table. Click on browse section. As we can see that if I scroll down, 50 records has been inserted into 2 sets of pagination. Per page contains 25 values. So basically this is our dummy data that we have inserted by using faculty library inside our faculties table. Next we have to insert that same value inside this students table. So if you go to structure, this is the value that we have to set. So first of all we have to create a factory file. Back to terminal, go to factory and create a file, and let's say that student factory.php file, and also inside this seeds folder we have to create a seeder file. So back to terminal, and let's say that PHP artisan make seeder, and this is all about student seeder file. So this is, let's say, student seeder. Press enter. Successfully we have created the seeder file for our students table. I'm going to editor. Now inside this seeds folder, this is the file that we have created, and this is the factory file that we have created. So open up the file called students factory, get rid of all these comments. I'm going to use called Figure library. So let's say that factory define. Inside this define, let's create or import the model for that. So this is app, let's say models, student, class. Second parameter, we have to pass anonymous function. Inside this anonymous function, we are going to use called faker, and this is faker object. So what are the parameters actually inside this return array that we have to put? So back to browser, back to table, and these are the columns that we need to import the data for these. So first column, something called registration number. So copy this key, back to our editor, and let's say that registration number, I'm going to use called faker number between. Inside this number between, we have to pass the first parameter as the minimum value. So let's say that this is the minimum value, and let's say that this is the maximum value I want according to our registration number. Back to editor. This is next what we want about gender ID. So I'm going to use called gender ID, and for that let's import called use app, let's say models, and this is about our gender model. So this is gender, all, let's say random, and this is all about the ID. It will give about the random ID generated from our genders table. Next we have the column called name. Copy this key, let's say that name, and finally let's say faker name. Next we have called email. So copy this key, pasting it here, and let's say that faker, it should be unique as a key, and finally we have to attach called save email. What we have next called roll number. So copy this key, back to editor, and let's say that roll number, this should be faker number between, let's say that 1 to let's say 50. This is the roll number that we have supplied. Finally we have called phone number. So this is phone number, faker, we have a key called phone number. Next we have called address. So copy this key, and let's say that address, this is all about faker and address as a key. Next we have called profile photo. So this profile photo contains a null value, so we are not going to insert that value inside this column. Next we have called father name. So copy here, pasting it here. I'm going to use called faker name. So if we back to the documentation of our faker library, back to documentation, as we can see that inside this name, if we pass about the male value, it means that it will always actually supply or pass the male value or the male name. If I pass female as a key, then it will generate the name of a female. So back to editor, I'm going to pass inside this name as a male parameter, so it will generate always a male name. Next we have to write about the key something called mother name. So if I copy, pasting it here, and let's say that faker, it should be name, and inside this I'm going to use called female. Next we have to pass about the age. So copy this key, back to editor, and let's say age, this is about faker, and finally I'm going to use called number between. So this is all about, let's say that from 7 years to let's say 25 years. So these are the default values, guys. This is the faker library that we have used for the student model. Next we have to go inside our seeder file. So open student seeder file. Inside this I'm going to use called factory and create method. Go here and let's app models, let's say student class, and I'm going to create called 100 students for our school application. So if I save this file, back to our database seeder file, comment this line, and let's say that this call, and let's say that student seeder class file. So if I save this file, back to our terminal, clear out all these things, and let's say PHP artisan db seed, pressing enter. Now a student seeder is seeding. It creates about 100 records. Actually, what we have supplied as a limit inside our, let's say, student seeder, and this is all about 100 records. So back to browser, browse section, and if I just go its descending order, this is the 100 ID, and this is the all about 100 records actually our seeder file has created. So this is all about the video session of creating about the fake datas for our class section, faculties, faculty types, genders, and students. So all we have done with our faker library. So back to slides. So basically guys, by using this faker library, we have imported the dummy data for all these sections. So inside this video session guys, if you have any query, then please drop your comment. I will give my reply as soon as possible. So for this video session guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day.